Good morning, everyone. I'm Pastor Sigmund, Berean Bible Church, Grace Life Church. This is a podcast called Grace Life Unleashed Podcast with Pastor Dave and friends, and it's playing chess in a checkers world. And we're here for one reason, and it's really one reason only. Our Wednesday Bible study, I'm turning into more of a practical. In fact, I don't think you get any more practical. And I know of no other grace pastor or grace organization that is geared towards helping people get through these coming, what I consider to be hard economic times. We're either talking a recession for sure, or maybe even a depression. I don't know how bad things are going to get. Again, if you're interested in more of our videos, again, our website is gracelifeunleashed.com. Our YouTube site is Grace Life Unleashed by Dave Sigmund. Our Facebook site is Grace Life Church and or Berean Bible Church. And we have a Rumble account, Grace Life Unleashed. Everything is referred back to, as far as our website and Facebook goes back to YouTube. And if you get on YouTube, please subscribe. And if you want to get notified every time we put a video up, hit the little alarm button. I was telling some of the people in our own assembly here that some of them have not subscribed, and we're going to start having quizzes to find out who's listening and who's not. I guess maybe we'll even give prizes. But either way, we're glad to be here. I'm really happy with the response we've had so far. This is like our third, maybe fourth one, and we're going to get a little deeper as every week goes on. My first rule, and as we go through life, and this is, it's designed to be a little bit sarcastic, a little bit funny, but don't get dead. That's life rule number one. I am not interested in you becoming a martyr. I am not convinced even that God wants you to become a martyr. We need to know the boundaries. We need to know the rules, and we need to play life within those boundaries and within those rules. You never saw Paul trying to get dead. Although sometimes it's almost like he did have a death wish, but he never once said that he was going to go stand in front of an oncoming train and let it run him over. He wished he'd be with Christ, which is far better, but he knew when he was here that he had things to do. Some of this goes back to a discussion I had with my wife way back years ago, where she told me to stop throwing Bible verses at her. And she made the comment of just tell me what to do. And as much as I do not like telling people what to do, what I've found is that sometimes we need it to be pointed in the right direction. And, even Paul, when he says, I beseech you, he's not telling you what to do. He is not telling you what to do, but he's definitely pointing you in the right direction. Sometimes we as Christians lack a lot of common sense. And I think it's a inappropriate application of what God's doing today. A lot of people want to make the grace life law light, and that's not right. A little bit of chastisement, a little bit of punishment, a little bit of intervention, a little bit of healing. No, that's not. We got to be pure in our teaching. We have to be consistent in our teaching, and we need to understand what God's doing today. Now, this is a chart I put up last week, and if there's anything I tell you that you want to apply to your life as far as understanding economic conditions, this chart, this is the future. And it's the future because it's true every single time. The Federal Reserve started raising interest rates last year. And what people are waiting for is they're waiting for them to pivot. And by pivot, what they mean is either stop raising rates or start lowering them again. And unfortunately, what's probably going to happen is this. The bubbles that are out there are amazingly huge. And they were created by the United States. We printed all this money during COVID, and all the issues that have to do with quantitative easing, and now they're trying to tighten that up again. It's not going to work. And what's going to happen is, number one, they're going to stop raising interest rates, because eventually that part they'll fix, but that's not even the problem. But then we're going to have some sort of crisis. And I don't know what that crisis is going to be. Something is going to happen. I really don't even know what it's going to be. But at that point, they're going to have to start printing money again. and they're going to have to start quantitative easing money again, and that is the beginning of the end. That is the beginning of hyperinflation. Now, that could take another 10 years. It could go quicker, could take longer. But what that means at that point is the stock market will go up to record highs, and gold and silver will go up to record highs. But it's all based on inflated money. And so it has nothing to do with anything. But until then, what we see is the majority of the decline in bear markets, and we're in a bear market. We're under the 200-day moving average. We're actually pretty much under the 200-week moving average in a lot of cases. But the low doesn't come in until after the Fed pivots. And right now the Fed is still tightening. So we know for sure, for a fact, and I can assure you this for 100%, we know for a fact that the low is not in the stock market. And so, what we found in 69 was when the Fed finally quit, tightening things up and pivoted, the stock market went down 36% after that, okay? 73 went down 48% after they were done pivoting, or done tightening, I guess you could say. 81 went down 27%, 2000 51%, 2007 58%, 2019 35%. So what kind of decline are we going to see in the stock market after the Fed pivots this time? And everybody's trying to anticipate. Well, the first thing that's going to happen when the Fed starts to pivot is that the stock market will rise. Everybody's going to try to front run it. They're going to try to anticipate, we're going to new highs, which is true, but not quite as quick as you want it to be. The thing I've found in dealing with the stock market is the stock market is slow, the stock market doesn't make any sense, and the stock market is manipulated. And so you need to understand and you need to realize that they want your money, and it's designed to take your money. And in case you're wondering, they're actually doing a pretty good job of getting it all. So everybody's going to jump in because they don't want to miss it, the failure to miss out, FOMO. A lot of people suffer from that. And they're going to want to jump in, they're going to put a whole bunch of money in, and then all of a sudden the stock market's going to tank. And we're almost to the point now to where we're going to see a minor tanking. I think in the next week we're going to come down, then we're going to go up, and then we're going to have a hard decline. And I think we're close to whatever crisis is coming. I really do. I think within the next 6 months we're probably going to see whatever crisis this is that's going to cause the government to pivot. Growing up, I was told that the stock market is a leading indicator of things to come. The stock market knows when we're headed into a recession, and the stock market knows when we're coming out of one. The stock market knows when things are going to get well, and the stock market knows when things are going to get bad. And so the stock market just it tells the future. And in a sense, that's true, but what I've come to realize over the years is the stock market actually makes the future. As long as the stock market is going up, things, and a lot of money out there, things seem to be good. And when the stock market changes and starts going lower, about a year later, the economy is a mess because of the stock market and the things behind the stock market. So I'm not quite sure. I believe it's a leading indicator. I think it's probably more the engine than people realize as far as life goes on. But anyways, this is an overlay of the S&P 500 from 1929 to today's stock market. And what happened in 1929, if you take a look at the top line, the red line, we set new highs, the roaring 20s. And you're wondering, what caused the roaring 20s? The roaring 20s was caused by a lot of free money, or cheap money, we'll call it, low interest rates. And the reason the government did that is because of the 1919 pandemic, the Asian flu. And if you don't think history repeats itself, it sure rhymes. Because what did we just go through in 2019, 2020? Another, COVID flu. And it's like, wow. And then because they shut the economy down, they printed a bunch of money. That money now is going crazy. They're trying to suck it back in again. And things move on. So there's a lot of similarities here. And if you look at the blue line in the bottom, that's kind of where we are right now. We've had some sort of correction. In fact, the stock market hit its all-time highs last December, a little over a year ago, last January, about a year ago. That's when the stock market hit its all-time highs, and it's been down ever since, down about 25% since then. And people are like, okay, the low's in. It's time to jump back in again. And I think we're going to see another, 10, 15% correction, and we're going to jump up, and we're going to move up because people are going to try to front run this Fed, lightening up on the interest rates, and we might even hit another all-time high. and then after that we are going to crash. And I hope I'm wrong, but I think we're going to crash hard. And in fact, I showed you guys a chart after 1929. In fact, it took 25 to 35 years before the stock market got back to even again. So if you can afford to be negative for 25 years, you'll be okay. But we need to learn to, I think, get out of the stock market. And I had to learn was to quit, buying and holding it. You need to learn how to sell and then come back and rebuy. In the process of trying to learn how to short markets, and I'm a little bit scared of doing that. Bear markets tend to break very quickly, and you got to run some tight stops. On a positive note, I actually have. Last year I made money trading, but I didn't do a lot of trading. But I did make money, so I figure I'm doing something right because most people lost 25, 30%. And I'm showing, positive 10 to 15%. I'm happy with that. But again, this is not a stock channel. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're not here to tell you what stocks to buy. I'm here to help you get through this coming economic times. What are you going to do if you lose your job? What are you going to do when food prices go up? Well, they're all done going up. Okay, you think so? That's fine. You do you. But if you look at this chart here, the blue line, we're pretty much where the red line was above there. And then things jumped up, and then all of a sudden, what? It went way down. And the stock market lost, 80, 90% of its value during those next 2 years. Do you think you can handle that? Maybe you can. Can you handle your retirement being gone? Can you handle your pension being gone? Can you handle getting laid off from your job or losing your job? Those are all things that could very real happen to somebody. Now, to understand God's program today, okay, we live in a dispensation of grace. This is an adult dispensation. If you think God is going to feed you and clothe you and in a sense protect you, he's not, okay? We have all spiritual blessings in heavenly places, and you are not in heaven. You're here on earth. And you live in a sin-cursed world, among sin-cursed people, in a sin-cursed society, you are going to have problems. But in Romans 9, Paul's talking to the Romans, and he makes a comment about something that happened with Pharaoh. And he says, "For this scripture saith unto Pharaoh, even for this same purpose have I raised thee up." Now, again, we got to understand what the purpose was. God's purpose for raising Pharaoh up was to basically glorify Israel, that I might show my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. So we have a situation here to where God is talking to Pharaoh through Moses, and he says, you know what? The reason you are the strongest country in the world is so I can destroy you. And if you understand the story of when Egypt and Israel were together, and Israel was slaves to Egypt, when the Egyptians, or when the Jewish people left, when the Jews left Egypt, they plundered the Egyptians. They took all their gold, they took all their silver, and they took all their wealth. And the reason they took it was because the Egyptians gave it to them. They didn't steal it. The Egyptians gave it to them. And they gave it to them so they would go away, because God was destroying their country. Now the question is, well, how'd that wealth get there? Well, that wealth got there because God wanted it there. God wanted that wealth there so he could give it to the Jews. Now, that's not what God's doing today. So I'm not taking you here to tell you that God is going to somehow give you wealth, because you're a Christian. That God's somehow going to divinely protect you because you're a Christian. That God's going to somehow divinely heal you because you're a Christian, because he's not. Okay, this is the dispensation of grace. This is not what God's doing today. But the principle here of what God did applies to any dispensation, okay? In Genesis 41, so let's go back and look at the story of how all the wealth got, into Egypt. In Genesis 41, this is a story about that Pharaoh had a dream about 7 years of plenteous and 7 years of famine. And in Genesis 41:25, it says, "And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. God has showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kind," okay, remember there were these fat cows that came out of the river, "are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. The 7 thin and ill-flavored kind that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine." So he's saying, all right, we got an issue here of 7 years of good and 7 years of famine. "This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showed unto Pharaoh." So God is telling the future unto Pharaoh. and that there's going to be a drought coming. But before the drought, there's going to be 7 years of really, really good crops. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine. And all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. Okay? I grew up on a dairy farm, and we were very dependent upon weather in growing our crops. We didn't have irrigation because overall in Wisconsin where I grew up, it pretty much rained as much as we needed and usually too much. But in 1988, my brother Alan and I ran the farm. In 1988, we had almost a zero crop. It just didn't rain. I remember on Mother's Day, it was 100 degrees. It's never 100 degrees on Mother's Day in Wisconsin. And corn was really, really bad, and the hay was bad, and the wheat was bad, and we just had no crops. And after that, we made a decision that, we were always going to have some extra crops on hand. Because when there's a lot of, yield, the price of crops pretty much falls pretty far, and it's almost to the point to where you could have, stored all that feed ahead of time and things would have been great. But can you store 7 years of extra crops? Wow. United States used to have a program to where they would buy and hold corn, excess corn, and then sell it later. And they actually paid farmers to store their corn so that they could control the price of corn a little bit more, and that we didn't see these nasty drops. And they found that it cost a lot of money to pay farmers to store corn, and they got out of that program. So the United States does not have a reserve program anymore to where we store crops. We used to also, the government used to buy extra cheese and store that and then keep it for when things were bad, and then they found out that it never got bad, so they just got out of the cheese program too. So all these programs that, one time were there, and I think they were a result of the drought, because along with the Great Depression, there was a Dust Bowl. They always seem to work together. And in the next year or two, we're actually hitting a cycle where we're going to have another drought in America again. In fact, it was really dry this fall in a lot of places. So who knows? These are cycles. These are not something that God manipulates in the sense that he is micromanaging things. They have to do with cycles that happen to have more to do with sunspots and actually other things like what cycle we're in. Okay? And the plenty shall be known in the land by reason of that famine following. It shall be very grievous. For that the dream was doubled into Pharaoh twice is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. And we're saying there is it's going to happen. There's not even, doesn't matter what you think. Now therefore I let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the fifth part of the land of Egypt in 7 plenteous years. So they're going to want to keep 20% of the crop. They're going to stick in storage every year, and it's going to be a long-term storage. And the thing about it is when crops are plenteous, the prices are usually pretty lousy too, so it probably wasn't even going to cost them that much. But they were going to store this crop, and if you rotate it right, it shouldn't have been a problem, and obviously it did. So Joseph is telling basically Pharaoh what to do, and let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And that food shall be for the store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And again, is there anything wrong with having a little bit for a rainy day? No, but we here in America have now become accustomed to just-in-time everything. People think their grocery stores have a lot of food in them. No, they don't. If they quit getting deliveries, the grocery stores will be empty in 3 to 5 days. Granted, the spam would probably be there yet, but they would basically be empty in 3 to 5 days. And so if things ever get bad, trust me, it's not good. There's not a lot of storage of extra food. Somebody didn't turn off their phone. There's not a lot of extra storage in this country for food. So if you think that you're set and you're not going to run into trouble, be aware. And I told the people in my church to buy a little extra when you go to the store, or get 2 boxes of crackers and throw one in the corner. When you get some soup, grab 2 soups or 4 soups and throw 2 of them in the cupboard. And if anything, you're going to eat them anyways. And if you think the price is going to go down, not in the near future. Okay. So this is God just, hey, you want to get through this drought? Just find somebody to take care of things. All right, Genesis 41:46. So Pharaoh puts Joseph in charge. And Joseph is in charge of this program of storing grain, basically. And I'm sure this was wheat more than anything else. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth by handfuls. All right, so God's going to follow through on his end of the bargain, and he's going to have more than enough. And the thing about it is when you go through 7 years of plenty, people get complacent, and they figure it's always going to be there. And I think even in America here, things have been good. And when I talk to people about, hey, you realize that this could be coming and that could be coming, they look at me and they go, has it ever happened before? And I look at them and I go, well, not in my lifetime. I have a lot of very critical people that I talk to about what I think is happening, and they look at me and they go, so you are concerned about something that happened, back in the 1930s, that happened before basically you were born, and you think it's going to happen again based upon what? And so it's difficult to talk to people because, until it breaks, it's not broken, okay? And verse 49, 48, and he gathered up all the food of the 7 years, which was in the land of Egypt, and laid the food in the cities, the food in the fields, which was round about every city, and he laid it up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn in the sand, as the sand of the sea. Very much. That's a lot. But if you're going to plan on 7 years where they have like zero crop, until he left numbering for it without number. In other words, it was so much. People are probably thinking this guy's the biggest fool that ever lived. And you can store corn and wheat for a long time as long as you keep it aerated and stuff. Plus, if you rotate it right, we didn't have 7-year-old corn that they had. Hopefully, they rotated that out and they were storing new corn every year. That's always an issue too. All right, Genesis 41:53, it says, "In the 7 years of plenteous that was in the land of Egypt were ended." Now, boom, it's done. 7 years of just amazing crops. "And the 7 years of dearth began to come, according to Joseph had said, and the dearth was in all lands." Okay, so it goes beyond Egypt. "But in all the lands of Egypt there was bread." And the reason there was bread is because they had stored extra food. And obviously the other countries hadn't. "And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you do." So Pharaoh totally is trusting Joseph at this time. He says, hey, you ask Joseph what he's going to do. Because these people, they had no food. They had no food. And you think about it, it doesn't take a whole lot of no rain to totally destroy a crop. There's not enough irrigation even in this country to feed our people. And we pretty much, we're making it through until the next harvest, but it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And it's one thing to have a crop, but if you run out of food a month before the new crop comes in, what are you going to live on for that last month? Okay, be aware of that. Verse 56 of Genesis 41, "And the famine was all over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened up all the storehouses." Now, here's the thing. This is why we're here. I want to see the government's response or Joseph's response to the fact that the people have no food. Okay. Now, you got to understand he's going to do things in a particular order here, and I think this is very capitalistic. God has no problem with you making money. Okay. You plan ahead. You think ahead. Why do you buy stocks? You buy stocks with the hope of selling them at a what? A higher price later on. And making money. You don't get into the stock market to lose money. The reason you have your 401k, whatever it is in the stock market, is because you buy low, sell high. I bought Tesla 5 years ago, and the price was double. Well, it isn't today. You should have sold it about 2 months ago. I bought Walmart. Everybody needs Walmart. Well, you shouldn't have Walmart right now either. You should have got out of that a long time ago. Well, it's in my retirement plan because everybody's retirement plan has Walmart in. Every retirement plan has Google in it. Everybody's retirement plan has, Tesla in it. And guess what? They're all down. Well, I can't get out of my, well, maybe you got to find a different retirement plan. Then I don't know. It's you do you. I'm just saying the issue of buy it and hold it isn't going to work for the next 20, 25 years. We're going to be in a bear market. It worked for the last 25 years. I mean, you could pick anything almost and it would go up because you were falling uphill. We were in a bull market. Falling uphill, the buy the dip stuff worked every single time. Kathy Wood has been buying the dip on Tesla, and she is now out of business. She left her company, and her stock is worth almost nothing because she thought Tesla was going to the moon. And guess what? It did for the longest time. Made her look great, and then when things turned against her, it went down so fast that she has nothing left. Be aware of that. It's just cycles, and all these cycles end when they get back to zero. You look at Sears, Penny's, Kmart, all those companies at one time ran this world, and now where are they today? It's one of those things. So he says, hey, you go to Joseph, and he'll tell you what to do. Now, the thing is, these people had no money, obviously, because they were all farmers. They had no crop. They had plenty of their crop, and nothing grew. The government should probably just give them food, because that's what governments do, is they give you free food, okay? And that's how things work, right? But the thing about God is interested in protecting your dignity. God is not a welfare program, even though people want him to be. God is interested in giving you your self-worth. And what we're going to see here is that God in his wisdom had Joseph do these things, and he allowed the people to keep their self-worth. Now, was it their fault that there was a famine? No. Now, could the people have stored 7 years of food instead of selling it to the government? Yeah, they could have, but they were more than happy to let the government own it all. And there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt, in the land of Canaan, for the corn which they bought, and Joseph bought the money unto Pharaoh's house. What Joseph is saying, hey, I got corn, and it's for sale. Bring your money. It's like, no, he has to feel sorry for these people. He needs to he needs to have a welfare program. He wants their money. Like, well, that's going to destroy their dignity. No, we're going to see where we're going to go with this. If the government is going to plan ahead, and I'm not a big government person, let's make it you. If you and I are going to plan ahead, and we're going to do things that will make us money, what's wrong with making money? Okay, and that's what the stock market is designed to do. It's to make us money. You're speculating. You can buy futures, but basically the stock market is, you're assuming that someday this company will be worth more, and you can sell it at a higher price. And the same thing if you buy corn or wheat or gold or silver, you're assuming it's going to be at a higher price. If you think it's going to be lower, you sell it short. It's just, it's how everything's done. Okay. So in the end of verse 14, it says, Joseph gathered up all the money. Okay. Hey, when you're hungry, I don't know if money's an issue. So basically, he gets all the money from all the people. He sells them food. Okay. Now we got a problem. We've got 7 years. Okay. And verse 15 says, and when money failed in the land, and what it means by failing is there's no money left. I'm sorry, Mr. Joseph, I gave you all my money. I have nothing left, okay? And in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came into Pharaoh, or Joseph, and said, give us bread, for why shall, or should, we die in thy presence, for the money faileth. It's like, just give us, and by give, I think it means like free, okay? Okay, we gave you our money, give us food. We don't have any more money, but we don't want to die. And what does Joseph say? He goes, you guys got more stuff. Now, again, this is a agricultural-based community. Most people, even though they lived in the gated cities, they would go out every day and farm the land. And they were very much agricultural. And what does Joseph say? Does he say, here's free food? No, he says, give your cattle, and I will give you for your cattle if money fails. So I want you to sell me your cattle. Now the question is, okay, what's Joseph going to do with all those cows and sheep and all those things? Well, you got to understand, Joseph is going to buy their cattle, and then he's going to pay the people to take care of his cattle. Okay. In other words, he's buying up all their businesses. He's buying their farms in a sense, but he's buying their cattle. So first he has the money, and now he's buying their cattle, but he's not going to bring all the cattle and put them on his place. He's going to supply food for the cattle too, in the sense to where they're his cattle. So these people are selling their assets, and Joseph is buying their assets, but he's still going to allow the people to have dignity. He's going to give them a job, and the job is going to be to now take care of Joseph's cattle, or Pharaoh's cattle, I guess you could say. So understand how this process is working. This is wise. God knows. Again, he's not going to give them free anything. He's buying their cattle, okay? And they brought their cattle in Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses, for the flocks, and for the cattle of the herds, and for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. All right, so first year, we're out of money. Second year, I'm selling you my cattle. When that year was ended, they came unto him the second year and said to him, we have not hid it from my Lord, how that our money is spent. My Lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is none aught left in the sight of my Lord, but our bodies and our land. He goes, we got nothing left. It's us and our land. They're like, oh, you still have assets. Now, if you have the smarts to think ahead, and your neighbor has the stupidity to not, and things get bad, and he now has to sell his assets, but because you had planned ahead, you can buy his assets at a reduced price because guess what? He's hungry, he's starving. Is it wrong to do that? Okay? Back during, I don't know, it was either World War II or the Great Depression, I don't know what it was. If you had 100 pieces of silver, you could buy a really nice house. There actually are records of a house being sold for 100 pieces of silver. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have 100 pieces of silver, but right now 100 pieces of silver is worth about $3,000 maybe, maybe a little bit more than that. So you're telling me that I'm going to be able to buy a brand new, let's say equivalent to a, $500,000 house for 100 pieces of silver? Well, if things get bad, silver is not going to be worth $30 an ounce or $15 an ounce or whatever you want to make it. Depends if you're talking about paper silver or real silver. It's going to be worth what it needs to be worth. But if you bought it then, you missed it. But if you bought it ahead of time because you were thinking, you know what, I think money might fail. I think we're headed towards inflation. I think the government's going to be printing money again. And so you went out and bought some silver, and you had 100 ounces of silver, which didn't cost you hardly anything when you bought it. And now you can turn around and buy a $500,000 house for 100 pieces of silver because the economy is bad and these people have to sell. And so now you're going to be able to profit from your intelligence and they will lose from their mistakes. I don't believe God has a problem with that. Okay? We got to plan. And if anything, that's what this channel is for, is to help us plan. Pharaoh, through Joseph, planned. But they just didn't give it away and say, oh, I feel sorry for you because you're an idiot. They planned, okay? So they come to him and says, hey, all we have left is, our bodies and our land. And, Joseph's like, okay, you still got stuff, okay? Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread. And we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh, and give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate. Okay, so what's basically happening is this. They're now going to sell their land to Pharaoh. And Joseph's going to keep them on their farms, and he's going to turn them into sharecroppers. Okay? Again, the people still have their dignity, but Pharaoh becomes the owner of all their assets. So he's not trying to destroy their dignity, but he has no problem profiting from their stupidity, okay? So there's nothing wrong with being a wise investor. But I'll guarantee you, if everybody's doing one thing, it's probably not going to work, okay? And Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for the Pharaoh, and the Egyptians sold every man his field because the famine prevailed over them. So the land became Pharaoh's, okay? Now Pharaoh owns the cattle, He owns the land, and he owns everything. There's nothing left at that point. Okay, there's nothing left. And as for the people, he removed them to cities from one end of the borders of Egypt unto the other. Only the land of the priests bought not, and the priests had a portion assigned to them of Pharaoh, and did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them. Wherefore they sold not their lands. Okay, so that's a little side issue. Okay, now here, and then Joseph said unto the people, Behold, I have bought you this day and your land for Pharaoh. So here is seed for you, and ye shall sow the land. He goes, right, put you back on your land. Here's seed I want you to plant. And it shall come to pass in the increase that ye shall give the fifth part unto Pharaoh. And 4 parts shall be your own, for seed to the fields and for your own food, and for them of your own household, and for food for your little ones. Now, you talk about a sharecropping deal, okay? Now, again, Pharaoh owns the land. Pharaoh owns everything. But he's going to put these people on the land and saying, guess what? Your rent is going to be 20% of the crop. Now, there's no sharecropper out there that would think that's a good deal as far as ownership goes. But there's a lot of people who say, I get to keep 4/5 for myself. Yeah, and you can sell it. You can do what you want with it, and eventually maybe even buy your property back. But right now, you're going to live. And right now, I own everything anyways, and so I want 20%. It's a good deal. And there's, again, this gives the people their dignity, but here's what it also does. They're not defeated. If you do a good job farming, and you get to keep, 80%, it's possible you can get out of this hole someday. You can buy your land back someday. You can buy your cattle back someday, and you can get back on your feet again someday. But he's not putting them on there as slaves and destroying their dignity. God is not interested in destroying people's dignity. But at this point, Pharaoh owns everything. But he's also allowing people to have a future. In other words, he's giving them hope. You never want to destroy people's hope and make them miserable. Otherwise, they're not going to do anything for you. Nothing at all. And that's why communism doesn't work, is because they don't let the people keep any of it. It's all now the government's. Whereas if you only have to give 20% back, the odds are you're gonna try a little harder, because you're going to be able to succeed, and that's what's going on here. Okay, and they said, "Thou hast saved our lives. Let us find grace in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants." And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt unto this day that Pharaoh should have the 5th part, except the land of the priests only, which becomes not Pharaoh's. Isn't that interesting? That's how God does stuff. Okay. And so as we go through these times, I want you to plan ahead, okay? Like I told you before, I told my sister, don't buy a house yet. And again, I don't know if she's going to listen to me. I told my son-in-law over Christmas, do not buy a vehicle yet. We're getting close. And he called me yesterday and told me he bought a brand new 2022 truck. And I have no problem. They're down a little bit already. But if he would have had the patience to wait another 3 to 6 months, I think he could have bought that same truck for 20% less. I did tell my daughter, Brooke needs a different car. I just don't want her out there driving around with a car that could possibly break. I said, Brooke, is your car good enough to make it for another 6 months? She goes, oh yeah, it's running fine. I said, good. All right, let's get through this winter. Let's reevaluate come next spring, and we'll find you a car that's going to be on sale. I personally, I used to have 2 cars, and my Camry, it just wore out, and I went to price another one. I wasn't going to get a new one. I wanted to get a used one, and it was crazy high. This was like a year ago. And I said, you know what? I don't need 2 cars right now. I'm going to come back and buy that same car for 50% less, 6 months from now, because it had gone up so much during COVID. And so I'm like, nah, I can wait. So patience is something, and so we need to understand there's nothing wrong with buying something on sale. You don't have to pay full price. The economy is like a rubber band. Stuff gets too high, and then stuff gets too low. And I want to buy it when stuff's too low. But you got to have your powder dry if you're going to do that, okay? Philippians 4:11, Paul says, not that I speak in respect of want. Okay, now this is a good grace verse, because this is reality. Paul Paul is like, hey, I don't want to be needy and I don't want to be whiny. He says, for I've learned, okay, and when he says he's learned, it means it was a process. He's learned whatever state he's in, and that he's going to explain that in a second. Therefore, to be content. So we as grace believers need to be content. But if you prepare ahead of time, you don't have anxiety. And so many people, when things start to go bad, they have all this anxiety because they didn't prepare when they could have prepared. Okay? And he says, I know both how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and suffer need. So Paul says, I've been all over. I've had too much, I've had too little. I've been happy, I've been sad. I've been under distress and I've been happy. Everything's been good. And again, the issue is be content. But when you plan, you don't have the anxiety because you're in control. And when you panic, you're out of control. And that's when you make stupid mistakes. So if you believe that things are going to get rough over the next couple of years, why don't you plan, okay? Maybe you don't need that new boat. You don't need that new RV. You don't need that new house right now. Just hold off on it. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm telling you, you're going to be able to buy it at 50% off. That's the best sale you could have, but you just have to, get rid of this. I want it when I want it, and I want it now, Sometimes patience is your best friend, and we need to learn to be patient. And that's why Paul says, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. And all things are the good, bad, and the ugly. But yet Paul says, when the good, bad, and the ugly come, guess what? I'm content. So we need to show the world what our contentment looks like, because not only are we smart, but we understand that God has not promised us health and wealth and prosperity. That, bad things are going to happen to good people and good things might happen to bad people, but that's called life. We live in a sin-cursed world. But there's nothing wrong with using your brain. It's if everybody's doing something, it's probably wrong. So buckle down, Buttercup. Let's plan on things being rough. But if we plan now, we're going to be able to reap the benefits down the road. So let's not get greedy. Let's have patience, but let's keep our powder dry, and just be aware of what's going on. And again, I am not going to tell you what stocks to buy and what stocks not to buy. But I would not be a, buy it and hold them person right now. And if you're in those kind of programs, my advice, and again, you do you, is to figure out a way to get out of that and either go cash or do something. But do not have your money long in the stock market right now unless you you have stops put in place. Now, I have no problem with it. Right now, if you're long, I think it's great, because we're going to probably go up one more time yet. But then when it goes up one more time, you better be able to get out, because otherwise you're going to walk around going, oh, I made 20%. And then a month later, you're going to go, yeah, I lost 50%. Okay. Well, why did you lose 50%? Because I never got out when I was 20% up. I'm at the point in my life now where I'm happy with 5% gains, and I pop out. There's always an opportunity out there to gain 2, 3, 4, 5%. And you figure it out. If you could make 1% a day, like 1%, 1% a day, that's 365% in a year. That's not bad return, is it? But we get greedy, and it causes trouble. So be aware of that. Again, I'm trying to be encouraging. I don't want to be negative, but we need to plan a little bit. We need to think a little bit, and we'll do fine. But we also have this problem. There are some people that are not going to plan. There are some people that are not going to plot. There are some people that are not going to anticipate. And there are people who are going to lose their jobs, they're going to lose their houses, they're going to lose their pensions, and they are going to be just basically just homeless and poor and living on the streets and have nothing. What are we going to do then? We as Christians have an opportunity to show charity. So unfortunately, we're going to have to drag a few people along with us, but it doesn't mean that we have to be foolish. It means we can be wise. Use your brains. They're there for a reason. And again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your interest. I appreciate all you guys. This has gone better than I thought it was going to go. But I'm amazed how sarcastic or evil some people can be, in the sense of they don't believe that anything could happen. Well, guess what? Things can happen. Things can turn very quickly. So just be aware of that. Let's pray. Lord Heavenly Father, again, we thank you for salvation. Lord, we thank you that Christ died on the cross for our sins. Lord, we thank you for the grace message. Lord, it's an adult dispensation. It's a dispensation to where you allow us to fail, I guess you could say, and yet you also allow us to win. But you're not going to hold our hand. We fail on our own. We win on our own. You gave us a brain. You ask us to use it. Yeah, we have all spiritual blessings in heavenly places. We're set in the end, whether we mess up on this side of heaven or not. But Lord, we pray that we can think, we can act, we can plan, we can anticipate, and we can be mature so that we're not just freaking out in the sense that we're caught off guard. Again, we thank you for salvation in Christ and pray this in your name. Amen. I thank you for your time.